Today's video does involve a hot button topic, which is the use of AI. And there's going to be people who immediately say, well, hold on, what does that have to do with Stellar Blade? They'd never do that. They would never use that in Stellar Blade. You know, why do you care about this? Well, this does actually have to do with a direct quote and a direct idea and line of thinking from someone very associated with the Stellar Blade franchise, which is the Stellar Blade director and CEO of Shift Up, Kim Hyung-tae. Now, this is someone that I do respect as a creator. I think that he's made really fun, really cool things. And my goal with this video is not to say like Shift Up or any of these companies are bad. It's just to talk about the ideas mentioned here because they make me very concerned about the future of a franchise like Stellar Blade, which I actually really enjoyed the first outing of. I do have a question of the day for you, which is, what are your thoughts on AI in terms of use in video games, you know, generation of images, generation of graphics, all of that stuff? I mean, we are hitting a point where you will be able to generate a landscape using AI. But I guess my personal thought is that there's a big difference between using AI to generate something like that and creating it by hand. So that's something we'll get into today. But this did essentially come from a direct quote where Shift Up CEO Kim Hyung-tae was talking about AI, and this was at South Korea's 2026 Economic Growth Strategy event. Now, this was a little bit back, but it's something I haven't seen many people talk about in terms of its potential effect on the Stellar Blade franchise and the things that Shift Up is going to be doing in the future. Now, Kim Hyung-tae was talking about China and what China is able to do compared to what Korea is able to do, saying we devote around 150 people to a single game, but China puts in between 1,000 and 2,000 people. We lack the capacity to compete, both in terms of quality and volume of content. He went on to say that with AI, one person can perform the work of 100 people. Now, what worries me about this in general is just the fact that Stellar Blade, one of the things I liked about it so much was how handcrafted it felt. I'm not going to say that there was no repeated assets anywhere or anything like that, but it was very clear that with these environments and with the way that they tried to create the game, they really wanted it to feel like everything was a lived-in world. It wasn't random. It didn't feel like a random world. It felt like the buildings that you encountered had some kind of purpose, or maybe it had multiple purposes, had multiple visitors over the years. The costume designs themselves felt very intentional. Maybe somebody didn't like them, but they were still very intentional, handcrafted costumes for Eve. When you start getting into AI, even if we get to the most advanced AI you could possibly have 100 years in the future, I do think on a fundamental level, I mean, there'll probably be more advanced AI than that, but I'm just thinking as far as my brain can go. Even on a fundamental level, there is a difference between typing in a prompt and doing something by hand. There always will be a difference between typing in a prompt and doing something by hand. And so when you're implementing AI in a game, the question is, how are you going to do that? Now, are there ways that you can use AI? There probably are. Like, for example, if you have a randomly generated dungeon and you're putting all of these different pieces in there already that you created, and then you have an AI deciding how to best assort them in this randomly generated dungeon, I could see AI doing that. You know, I'm not saying that there's no way to use AI at all. In fact, artificial intelligence is already in video games. I mean, it's been in there forever. The fact that enemies and NPCs can react, move around on their own, and do things, that's a form of AI. But when it comes down to generative AI, this is where it becomes kind of risky, and I personally think something that can rob something of its soul. When you look at human-created art, if you tell someone, create this art for me, there is a difference between that and creating the art yourself. When you commission an artist to create art for you, or if you were to, you didn't create that art yourself. Maybe you did give ideas, maybe you said, I'd like it like this, I'd like this thing, but at the end of the day, that form of human expression comes down to the artist. There's still a person there putting a piece of themselves onto that page or into that drawing or into that thing. When you tell AI to do something, it's kind of a similar concept, except there is no person putting a piece of themselves into it. There's maybe a person offering suggestions to the AI, but there's no person actually putting that together. This comes down to how you fundamentally view art. If we could hit a point in the future where we had machine beings like Data from Star Trek, if you've ever watched Star Trek, maybe you'll know what I mean, where it's like this machine being who's essentially human. Sure. I don't see that happening. At least no time in the next 100 years. We're talking about just machines. We're not talking about things with soul, things with ideas and dreams and aspirations. We're talking about machines. As machines are now, they do not have soul. I don't know if we can ever hit the point where they have what you would consider a soul. It does come down to like fundamental ethics and should we make this thing? Could we make this thing? Is it just programming? Can it go beyond that? There's a lot of questions about that, and I do understand that with Stellar Blade, something that could come across hypocritical or odd is that a lot of things in Stellar Blade are created beings. They're not necessarily like original humans. You know, they're the Andro Eidos and things like that. But the difference is that society hit a point where those machines have soul. Where Eve, just because she's a created being, you know, by artificial means, she still feels, she still thinks, she has dreams, she has aspirations. So when you're looking at sci-fi, it's very easy to say, oh, well, Eve is a person. When we're looking at machines, I don't know what the future holds, but right now, you can't really say that of machines. When you put in a prompt in like, and you're a Call of Duty developer, and you put in a prompt that's like, make AI calling cards to put in here so we don't have to pay a human artist, you are messing with a machine and taking away a human developed piece of art. That's my concern with Stellar Blade. That is my concern with Shift Up when you're having this line of reasoning. And does it suck that China has so many more people than Korea? You know, that they can output so much? Sure. But we've seen it with indie developers. We've seen it with indie crews of like a dozen people or less. You can make amazing things with a few people if you take long enough and you're handcrafting that thing. I have yet to see examples of AI that can do that. I have yet to see, especially not ones that aren't just copying someone else. The closest I've ever seen to this being heartfelt and interesting is when it's very clearly ripping off the designs of several people and is inspired to a really insane degree by somebody else's work. Stellar Blade was so cool because it felt handcrafted. It felt like a lived-in world. It felt like the characters were actual people. I do get into ideas with AI that I can think of having some utility. Like if voice actors really wanted to do this, if they wanted to sign away their voice and say, hey, I'll come in and I'll record 1,000 lines, and we get to this point in the future where like you can type a question into an NPC and they can say that, you know, answer back to you in that voice actor's voice, and that voice actor's okay with it and they're compensated for it or whatever. I could see like things like that happening, right? Maybe I don't love that direction. Maybe I'd prefer that all of those lines are recorded by hand, but I could see that kind of thing happening. But it's not really generative in terms of creating environments, creating characters, creating gameplay. Once we start to get into that, once we start to dip our toes in there, I'm very concerned. A lot of this comes down to how you view these statements, how you view the future of technology developing, whether you even liked the original Stellar Blade, and if you're okay with the fact that just because other people are going to do this, that maybe they should. I've seen that argument a lot too. Oh, well, everybody's going to be doing X, Y, and Z. I don't know if everybody's going to be doing it is always a great argument either, but some people, that's how they view it. They say, well, every other company's doing it, we should do it too. I don't know. I don't really see it that way. Again, if we were at the point where these machines had some kind of soul, you know, like they were like a person, sure, this would be a different conversation. You know, then we're in the world of Stellar Blade itself. It's a very different conversation. What is a person? We're not anywhere close to that. I worry about the quality, that by chasing quantity, by trying to cut down that work, that you could eventually be laying people off, which we've seen with Square Enix, we've seen with other companies that are pursuing AI that are willing to lay people off, by the way, and take jobs away. But not even just that, that it could just directly impact the quality of something by chasing quantity, by chasing a shortcut like this. Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. I think it's a very interesting discussion. I just think it's a shame that it is a discussion, that it has to be. But I'll be interested to read what you think down below. If you are interested in more content, we have a full Stellar Blade playlist on this channel. And also we played through Stellar Blade over on our channel, Degenerate Plays, which is a podcast-style Let's Play channel where we play through games, talk, hang out, have a fun time. I would love to see you over there. I really want to grow that channel this year. And if you want to support us, you can use code DJAY123 on something like Fortnite, or you can also use that code for 10% off our store, cosmobunny.shop, where we make coasters, keychains, trays, and more, all one of a kind, made from comics, manga, magazines, and other books that have been damaged. We believe in giving those books and that art new life, that paper new life, instead of it ending up in landfills. So we want to make things that are one of a kind and unique. Coasters, keychains, trays, and more, made out of resin and that stuff, all over there. Code DJAY123, 10% off your first purchase. Have a fantastic day. And as always, everyone, stay shui.